I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking with Mike and Anne-Brigitte Taliaferro. They serve as the lead evangelist and senior women's minister at Mission Point Church in San Antonio, Texas. Mike and Anne-Brigitte have planted and led churches in the U.S., Brazil, and several African churches. They planted churches in over 40 nations in Africa over the course of 14 years. They have appointed 25 evangelists and women's ministry leaders and raised up many other leaders. They've been married for over 40 years and have 3 sons and 3 daughters-in-law. We talk about how they planted so many churches, what drove them, and some of the many miracles they've seen over the course of their ministry career. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I'm here in Long Beach, California at the Pacific Southwest Leaders Retreat, and we've just met for a couple days. Mike and Anne-Brigitte Taliaferro have been the headliners, speaking to our family of churches and the leaders within it. It's been a great time. What do you think, baby?
Oh, yeah. It's been wonderful. We're really grateful that you guys came and taught us. Anne-Brigitte did a phenomenal job with the women's program. So happy that you're here.
And so we're sitting here with Mike and Anne-Brigitte Taliaferro. Mike and Anne-Brigitte, so great to talk to you in person.
Great to be here.
Tremendous to be here.
Real honor.
Thank you for your podcast and all you do.
Yes, it's been great. And I know that I've been doggedly trying to get you on this podcast, and I appreciate that we trapped you right here in Long Beach, and we got you, cornered you, couldn't go anywhere. And so thank you so much.
So glad this worked out.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. How did you guys become Christians?
What a story, eh? Anne-Brigitte and I have known each other since we were little kids.
Wow.
We attended our families attended the same mainline traditional Church of Christ in Northern Virginia outside Washington, D.C. So I was 7, she was 4, and we don't have any memories of back then in the 1960s. But we were there in the Sunday school and in the church services together, and my memories of her began, just camp and whatever. We were friends in high school, and we were high school sweethearts. I mean, she was in high school.
Yeah, I was in high school. You were in college.
I was in college.
I snagged the college guy.
Yes, that's important. I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
But Anne-Brigitte was for me. I was a sophomore at the University of Colorado and studying environmental design with an aim toward architecture, but I was changing. And the very non-Christian Mike who arrived in Boulder was and visited the church where Tom Brown preached a few times, but I just wasn't that interested. And then as I began to change during the year, my interest in Anne-Brigitte really took off because I knew Anne-Brigitte's a really fine lady. All of a sudden,
wow. 17 years old.
and my mom recommended, and when I went back home that summer, we started dating. Now, the question was how we became Christians.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Okay. So anyway, got baptized at Abilene Christian University, where we were both, we met up with folks. I met up with people from Crossroads, and guys that were getting their masters. And so we had a Bible talk, and I realized that I had not done anything. Like I hadn't obeyed the gospel when I was baptized at 11 years old. I hadn't become a disciple, and I said, man, I need to do this myself. But we have known each other all these years, and since 56 years.
Giving it away.
Wow.
56 years.
That's great.
I've known her, yeah.
Wow.
I think my path was a little different than Mike's. Mike, lived a real double life in high school. Went to church on Sunday mornings after a night out partying on Saturday night, and I was just a goody-goody, and I just thought I was all that religiously, right? I just followed all the rules and loved God and cried when I read my Bible, and was initially baptized at 10 and a half. And when he was baptized in Abilene, I was very happy for him, right? I mean, he had changed, and I was really grateful for that. And I couldn't really see my own religious pride. There was a lot of sincerity there, a lot of really wanting to follow God. And we moved to Boston in 1982, and I was studying the Bible with people. And as I studied the Bible with people, I thought, I didn't do this.
Wow.
But then I thought, no, I must have done it because I am a Christian. Kind of a retroactive thing that doesn't really jive with the Bible. And so when we were part of the original New York City mission team. Yeah. And as we were coming over the George Washington Bridge, I looked over at the city and I thought, I can't help anybody here become a Christian if I won't own where I'm really at. Wow. And so I was one of the baptisms that summer in New York City. Just finally had the courage to admit that I really wasn't saved the way the Bible said. And it was very freeing. It was awesome. So my road was a little different than Mike's. And he asked me one time, he said, so you're telling me that when you were little, if your parents had decided to not be Christians, you would have stayed going to church. I was 10. And I said, oh, absolutely. I really couldn't see myself very accurately. What 10-year-old's going to do that? Right. So my religious pride ran pretty deep, but I was grateful. I was grateful for the patience people had with me and really the grace and the love. Nobody came down hard, and it's just really a good journey to that moment.
So let me stitch it together just a little bit so that it makes sense. Okay, so there was this pagan architectural student in Colorado, but I went back to Virginia to where we had grown up, and we started dating, and then I switched to Abilene. So I'm so different than a lot of people in the ICOC in the sense that I went to Abilene. I got a degree in theology. I wanted to be in the ministry in the main line, and then I met up with guys doing Bible talks and really making disciples, and I said, wow, this is great. This is fantastic. And so I actually invited Mitch Mitchell to have lunch with me. No one invited me. I invited him. I said, come on, I want you to take me to lunch. I want you to tell me all about I want to take you to lunch, and I want you to tell me all about what you're doing. So we went out and had lunch, which meant that then Anne-Brigitte and I got baptized in Abilene. We got married in 1981. And when I graduated, we went to North Carolina. So we were part of the original Triangle mission team.
Wow. Really?
We were a part of the original Triangle mission team. Then we moved to Boston, and they asked us after 1 year, would you go on the New York City mission team? And of course, the last paper that I had written before I got my degree was on planting a church in New York. And so here I am about 18 months later saying, okay, we're headed to New York to plant a church in this great city. Really, and we were number 17 and 18 on the original New York City mission team.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. I remember you talking about that in a class earlier today, that you had written that paper on. It's almost like you're a prophet, like the Spirit put that on your heart, going to New York City.
It was really something to sit down and theologically and from just a practical standpoint, how would I do this? And now here, 18 months later, the two of us are looking for an apartment in Queens, somewhere about 42nd Street in Queens, riding the 7 train into New York. So for all the New Yorkers that are listening, we were there very early on. I mean, original members of the team, and we were living in Queens and going to Manhattan to do campus ministry during the day.
That's amazing. Okay, so you went to CU Boulder. Tom Brown was there, not open, hard-hearted. Went back to Virginia.
Me, not Tom.
Right. Went back, had a turnaround, started dating again. You guys got married shortly after that?
Yep. After my freshman year in college, I was 19. He was 22.
Yeah, I spent this. We spent one summer dating in Northern Virginia, and I switched to Abilene.
But you must have had like a spiritual, not a conversion, but at least a change of heart. Like, I want to get more spiritual. I'm going to go to Abilene.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and study Bible and theology and get a degree. I mean, it was a radical and quick change.
Yeah.
I think I really needed that time in Abilene just to mature as a person and to let that decision sink in. And I'm glad I had that time. And I joke with some of the guys, I had a degree in theology before it was cool. So, but it was good for me. It was a good time for me too. Yeah.
Okay, so then you guys got married. Did you go to Abilene
I
also?
did as well.
Okay, so you both graduated from there.
I didn't graduate from because I was 3 I'm 3 years younger than Mike.
Okay.
So I did further schooling in New York City for a while. But
I see. Okay, and then early years, New York City was absolutely explosive in its growth. Can you give us just kind of some fill-in of what you saw there during the short time you were in New York City?
What I loved about it is the tagline that Steve and Lisa would talk about is fun, fruit, and family. And it really was a fun time. There was not a lot of pressure. We all worked hard. It was amazing. And, in Manhattan, there's millions of people walking around, and there's 18 of us on the team, and we'd run into each other. I mean, just Holy Spirit moments, right, as you're sharing your faith. But it was so much fun. We had fun events. Church was fun. Church was at 3 p.m, which helped every New Yorker to sleep in. But I just think it was, and there was relationship and there was training. I just think that was, it really was. It wasn't a complicated program. We're going to all go out, we're going to share our faith, we're going to share about Jesus, we're going to study the Bible with people, we're going to be friends, we're going to build family.
Right.
And it was just, God blessed it in an amazing way.
We definitely worked hard and we loved what we were doing, but we were having so much fun. It was a lot of fun, a lot of family, a lot of friendships, just a lot of. I mean, we were enjoying New York. It was a great city, and it was just the church grew so well. 60 baptisms the first year.
Wow.
And then 180 baptisms the second year.
Wow.
It was exploding.
Yeah.
But Anne-Brigitte and I, interestingly enough, something that we started way back in 1984 was we took a full day off in the ministry. We just said Mondays we'd work hard all till Sunday, and then Monday we just said we're gonna disappear. We're just gonna disappear, and that was something that's blessed our marriage all these years. That started all the way back in New York. Just we're gonna have a day together, the two of us. We may go to Jones Beach or Central Park or something, and maybe we'll go see a movie or something. But we're just gonna take that day off, and that has blessed our marriage and just life immensely over the last 3 or 4 decades.
Well, that's what was so powerful about your sharing earlier or yesterday in terms of making those decisions to prioritize your family, your marriage, and then later on when you had kids to do that. And I'm sure that's contributed to the longevity of your ministry, staying in the ministry, when so many people have either dropped out or gotten out of it.
I think so. I think that disconnect is important.
Can you guys give me an overview of where you've been since your conversion? How long were you in New York, and kind of go from there?
Yeah, we were in New York for 4 years. We did a language internship in '86 in São Paulo, Brazil. And then after we left Brazil at the very last few days of 1988 and switched to Africa. So we were in Africa for 14 years. And then came back from Africa in 2003 to San Antonio, Texas. So that's an overview of where we've been, and we're still connected.
30,000 foot view.
That's a rapido. But we're still connected. We still we still try to be supportive of the work in Brazil and in Africa, and love all that God is doing.
Okay, so Pam and I have a connection to Brazil now because our daughter married a man born in Brazil.
Yes.
And his name is Felipe Moraes, the son of Dacio and Diana Marias. And Dacio is one of the early converts, I believe.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I studied the Bible with Diana at Hunter College.
Yes. She went on the original mission team as a single woman.
So we are connected.
Yes,
like
we
we're
are.
family, I think.
Yes,
I think
thank
that makes
you.
sense.
Yeah, thank you.
In your lesson, you said Brazilians are great people, and I just gave you a big amen to that. Felipe is just an awesome guy. I just love the guy.
Yeah.
But how did you guys get selected to go to Brazil?
Yeah.
And here you are, you're part of a great mission planting right there in New
what
York
was the
City.
connection?
Like, how did it happen? How did it develop?
Well, it was the early days, right? And you tell the story. It was great.
It was, where do you want to go? And because we moved to train. It was always our goal to train.
Right.
And to end up in a large urban, I wrote the paper on New York, but New York was taken. And they were doing great. And they were eager to send, and so Steve said, where do you want to go? And so we prayed, we thought. And São Paulo, Brazil, was at that point the third largest city on earth. And I actually have relatives who were missionaries to Brazil in the mainline Church of Christ. And we just felt a connection here with São Paulo, and we thought this is a world city. São Paulo is the New York of Brazil, and in a lot of ways, maybe the New York of South America. And Rio de Janeiro, is sort of the Los Angeles. And so for Brazil, it's just a great, great city. And so we prayed and prayed, and that's where we wanted to go.
Wow.
And that was back in the days when you did research in an encyclopedia that you opened, right? There's no Google. What does it look like? I mean, it's like, okay, here's the encyclopedia picture of São Paulo. So
what was the first year like in Brazil? What was your plan? What was your idea? What was your basically your game plan going into foreign country, first time?
And how many people went with you?
We had 15 on the team. We had started language lessons before we went. And then we planted the church in 87, but we had done a 2.5 month language internship with almost the whole team for 2 months the summer before that, June, July before that. And we had intensive language instruction, which was fantastic. We actually even brought our language instructor back with us to New York for a while. So she lived with us and kept teaching us. So we felt pretty, that was pretty important to be able to communicate. We just loved it. Like you said, the people are amazing. But we loved it. We hit the ground just embracing the city, embracing the culture, embracing the food, the people, football, meaning soccer, just the whole thing. Yeah. And it was, again, it wasn't complicated, but we're here to help people know Jesus. So we used every opportunity, we used every errand, because again, it's an urban city, you're walking everywhere. It's not like you're getting in your car and going someplace, right? So getting on the bus, coming back from the bus, all of us used every opportunity that we had. Wow. And so many people responded. The first Bible talks, and Dacio was part of that. Your daughter's father-in-law, right? And so I just think it was a lot of fun. There were so many funny moments with the language, right? So we were very bonded with those early Christians and all the mistakes the Americans made, right, on stuff. Just so many funny stories. But again, it was fun. It was, our goal here is to help people become Christians and love them, and family. And to this day, there are people in the São Paulo church that go all the way back to those first months, and the bond is there, the tie is there, the love is there. And I just think it was a really magical, incredible time. Yeah.
Wow.
Brazil had had a military government for a long time, and they were just coming out of it right after we arrived there. And there was just a really good positive. The sun was coming up. The sun was rising in Brazil, and and it was just beautiful. And Brazilians are beautiful people. They are just a beautiful people. And we just we just tried to have fun and family and fruit and just have a great time and learn the language. I'm convinced that people came to church just to hear the American botched Portuguese. I mean, literally.
I'm sure.
Sometimes
they did.
I'm standing there, I'm trying to make a somewhat serious point.
Yeah.
Everyone bursts out laughing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have
Yeah.
to stop. I don't know what I said, but you know.
That's so funny.
Oh, boy.
Wow. So how long did it take before you were able to do a sermon in Portuguese? Was there that like translation time where you're preaching in English and someone's translating for you? Or did you just go, we're going to start this right away after your language training?
I think we did some messages that were translated, but we did a lot of work in New York to get ready for it.
Okay.
And then that I would work really hard on those sermons so that I could be ready to give sermons. So pretty much from day one, when the church was officially planted, I was preaching in Portuguese.
Wow.
And, you know, a lot of notes, and the notes each week shrank, every month shrank less and less. And then finally I said, you're just going to do every sermon for a while on one page of notes, just so that it's conversational, so that I'm looking more to get really looking at people and talking. And God blessed us. Portuguese is a beautiful language, and we loved it, and it was a heartfelt language, you know, and we became fluent in it. Wow. And even to this day, you know, we speak Portuguese every day in the home, and we'll have a few minutes. It just happens. It's not like we work on it. We just speak in Portuguese every day at some point for a few minutes. A lot of times when the kids were growing up, it was if we want to say something to each other, and the kids not understand. Of course, you know, in South Texas, where a lot of people speak Spanish, you know, they might understand because the two are close but different. I feel like Portuguese, it's sort of like somebody from Louisiana talking to Queen Elizabeth. That's about the distance between Spanish and Portuguese. I mean, they're, you know, but we loved it, and it turned out, we thought when we left, that we'd spent all that time learning Portuguese. Right. And then we ended up several years later in Johannesburg with a Portuguese ministry that was reaching out to Mozambicans and Angolans who speak Portuguese. So we came in. There's never been, and now they joke in Brazil with me, Mike, you have a little bit of a Mozambican accent.
I don't. I maintained my São Paulo accent. Yeah, I did.
Linguistic purity.
Yes, linguistic purity.
Okay, you had to have at least one, you got to share at least one story where you really botched it in the language.
Yes.
Can I share your story?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so we're sitting in church, and he is so fired up about Bring Your Neighbor Day. I mean, just so excited about it. And he gets up and he says, don't forget, you know, we're having our Bring Your Neighbor Day next week. And the word in Portuguese for neighbor is vizinho. Mike said vazinho, which is little vase. So he did this entire announcement on, don't forget, next week is Bring Your Little Vase Day. And all the little vases don't know how to sing, and they don't know the songs, and share your songbook with them. And he went on.
Don't just leave them standing over there alone.
Right. And so people started to kind of snicker, and Mike didn't really realize it that he thought everybody's really with me. Yeah. And so he kept going and embellishing, and that was a pretty famous one.
That was famous. And then shout out to Jim Brown. Jim Brown, one of the famous mistakes as well is Jim preaching in a devotional about I was mountain climbing in Montana. Jim's a mountain guy from Montana. I was climbing a mountain in Montana, and I didn't have rope, and he didn't know the word, so he guessed ropa. And he said I was climbing mountains in Montana without clothes on. Because ropa is your clothing and corda is rope.
Sometimes it works to do that.
People began, the first they look at you like, was this sort of an existential experience you were having? And then they realize you're making a mistake, and everybody busts out laughing.
Oh my gosh,
awesome.
that is so
He had a lot of famous ones.
And Jim has many of mine that he could share. I mean, we all made them, and it just contributed to the fun. Really? You know, it's a part of the fun.
Yeah, and just to see the church grow so much and led by non-native speakers, it's the power of God. It's just awesome. Now, you could have spent the rest of your career there. I mean, that's just a massive nation, incredibly wealthy nation in terms of resources. But you ended up going to Africa. Okay, why? Why did that happen? Why didn't you stay there in Brazil?
Forces beyond our control. We thought we were going to stay there, and we were convinced that that our grandchildren would do homework on the table we bought for the dining room.
Right.
But what happened was that our churches reorganized themselves into world sectors, and so now all of Latin America was going to be linked together. All the Spanish and Portuguese and the one Portuguese-speaking country would be linked together to make the world sector for Latin America. And so New York was going to be connected to Africa. And so they said, well, listen, how about if you have a choice. You want to stay in Brazil and switch, or you want to go to Africa? And we said, we'll go to Africa. We'll continue to work with the Johnsons, and we'll go to Africa. And so we did. And it was with a lot of tears, but we felt like, okay, this is the Lord's will. It was tough. It was a very tough time, but it was a tough decision. We really loved everybody, loved them immensely. But we said, okay, it's onward to Africa, and we agreed and went sight unseen. We hadn't even been. So the first thing we did was we left Brazil in late '88, December, and then in '89, in February, we took our first scouting trip all throughout Africa. We did a scouting trip from Abidjan and Lagos and Nairobi and Johannesburg, Harare, whatever. We were in various cities, and so that's how it happened.
It was a little harder sell for me. I think my heart was so attached. Yeah. And I really, really thought we'd live there the rest of our lives. Yeah. My mother is French, and so we'd have giggles at the table sometime with her accent, growing up. And I thought, I'm going to become my mother. My kids are going to grow up and speak, Brazilian. I'm Portuguese, like a Brazilian, because that's how they're going to grow up, and they're going to laugh at me growing up. There was so much, and so but it ended up being, honestly, a decision that was relationally based. We didn't know the people that were going to be leading Latin America, but we knew Steve and Lisa, and we felt like it was a relational decision for us, a long-term. And so I would say that was a deciding factor. It wasn't the deciding factor, and I'm glad we did. So.
Okay, so 86 you went to Brazil. 88 you left?
Late 88, end of 88.
Okay, and then you went to Johannesburg. Is that where you landed?
We landed first. It's a confusing. We spent a month in Harare, Zimbabwe, and left a group behind.
It was in June, right?
Was
it in June?
It was, something like June.
June of 89.
Yeah, June of 89. We spent a little bit of time in Nairobi, and we left Jim Brown there and Tom and Lori Ziegler, and we went over, and then we went to Abidjan and spent 11 months, almost a year. Wow. I wish we'd have spent a few more months, because my French is basically, I think I speak French like Tarzan. I don't know. But, my French is okay, and I was able to speak in French in front of the church, but it never became like Portuguese. It never did for me. But I still, I understand what people are saying, and it was good. So we were in Abidjan. And so from then, after 1 year in Abidjan, back to Nairobi for 2 years. And then after that, down to Johannesburg.
Wow. But Johannesburg made sense because the couple that was there had left, and then another couple was leading, but apartheid was still in place. And then when everything lifted down there and apartheid was abolished, and it just was the city that made sense to lead from. Just a big city, an economic powerhouse for Africa. And so we moved there in September of 92.
Wow. But I I can't tell you how much we learned living in, our first long stop was Nairobi for 2 years. And Nairobi, Kenya, it was beautiful. It's beautiful. Nairobi is at about 5,300 feet of elevation, right on the equator. So you have Kilimanjaro that's snow-capped, even though it's on the equator. You've got a beautiful climate there and a wonderful people. Kenyans are just amazing, amazing people. And Nairobi, it's a very crowded city today. It was less crowded back then, but we enjoyed it. And I went and I learned Swahili. I became fluent in Swahili.
Wow.
I have no one to practice with is my problem. So, hey, do you speak Swahili? No, sorry, I don't. But I mean, we would preach in it and teach in it, and I think Anne-Brigitte and I loved Nairobi. It was a beautiful, and I loved Abidjan. We learned so much about Africa, and then on to Johannesburg, where we also fell in love. But each place taught us lessons, cultural and spiritual.
I just remember hearing so many stories about Nairobi, about the street preaching, about the crowds gathering. I mean, Bob Stia is in our church in Tucson, and he tells me stories. And
Studied the Bible with son.
I talked to Hervé in an earlier podcast about his time in Abidjan. But can you tell me a little bit more about that street preaching in Nairobi? Because it just, I remember hearing about it, going, this is incredible. Because I had done a little bit of that at UC Berkeley, but it was more just kind of like to get you pumped up and kind of just show that you're a bold person. But it seemed like it was actually effective there in Nairobi.
Oh, I think it was.
I mean, actually, you guys we had started in Abidjan.
Yeah,
when you had that Bible study.
We had started it, and so we started to go downtown and preach. And what would happen would be we would have 200, 300, 400 people that would just stop on the pavement there downtown. They had a big open walkway, a nice little walkway there, whatever the word is, and so we would always start with me speaking in English and it being translated into Swahili. And I think Kenyans found that interesting. Okay, I can sharpen my English, I can hear this American, whatever. And then we would go like that. And then after about 3 or 4 minutes, we'd switch. Now I would start speaking Swahili. And he would translate into English. And so then I would start joking, you thought this Mzungu didn't speak any Swahili, but he does. And so we're like, and that made everybody laugh. And we had tremendous times. And so we rented this restaurant right across the street. And we said, everybody that would like to learn more about the Bible, just come on across the street. We're on the second floor here of this restaurant. And some days 20, some days 30 people would just walk across the street with us. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like, come follow me. And people came and great friendships began and people just loved learning the scriptures. It was just it was a beautiful thing.
It actually made the paper. One Friday or Thursday, it was like things to do in downtown Nairobi during lunch hour.
Really?
Go listen to the tall white guy preach. was one of the things. It made the paper.
Yeah, you can check this out, check that out, or listen. And to this day, my friends in Kenya they call me the Mzungu Mrefu, the tall white guy, because I would say, Fuata Mzungu Mrefu, follow the tall white guy right across the street here. And so I'm still Mzungu Mrefu in Nairobi.
It was just powerful to watch God work.
Oh, absolutely. That's very powerful. Now, there are at least 50 countries in Africa. You're in charge of the 2000 plan, or I can't. Was that the name of the
6-year plan?
The 6-year plan to get a church in every country that had a city of at least 100,000.
Oh, good memory, honey.
And I mean, I was a younger Christian. I was an intern at that time, but I was very excited about that time. But I remember hearing that, Africa in particular is a very difficult place to try to get that done. I know there's a lot of stress involved. What was your plan? What did you run into trying to accomplish that mission?
Wow.
I think that the plan of 6 years into 40+ plus countries was probably a little too aggressive.
That's an understatement. Yeah.
Okay. But it was well intentioned. And I think it made sense on most other continents. But for us, we were certainly, we did reach the goal, but we knew here's what was good. Here's what it forced us to do that was good. We knew that we had to establish training centers for ministers. So to make that goal, we had to get busy discipling and training ministers. And it kept us very serious on ministry, learning, discipling, training, staff training. We were really on it. And so we worked hard for Nairobi and for Lagos, Nigeria, and for Abidjan, and then eventually also Kinshasa, Zaire would be added as a fifth pillar church with Johannesburg. And we knew we had great people, but hindsight looking back now, we realized that we had marvelous people like Hervé and Janet Florent leading in Abidjan, or Richard and Sarah Alawaye leading in Nairobi, and Nietzsche and Daisy Aguaya, just to me, heroes, fearless.
Lagos.
In Lagos, fearless people. Americans who came over, and all of whom ended up going back. Some of these others, like you mentioned Bob Stia. Bob Stia was just fearless. He was amazing. Yes. So many people like that. Shout outs to Dave Peden and many others that and Tom and Lori Ziegler. So we had, looking back, this collection of people who loved the Lord and were effective in training up couples. And that's what happened. And so places like Lagos and Abidjan, Nairobi and Johannesburg trained people and really got those teams ready. And the support from the U.S. churches was amazing to plant these churches. The special contributions of the 1990s are still historic for the African churches. You, New Yorkers, Atlantans, everyone that gave in those special contributions, God bless you. The impact is amazing. It's amazing. It's like that they are still bearing fruit 35 years later. So that would be how I think the Lord just blessed the work just by getting us going training.
Yeah. And I think, it was overreaching. But I wish we had known more, but you always do when you look back, right? You always wish we had done this. I wish we had done that, because I do think that some places were cheated out of really well-trained people because of the frenzied pace. But there were some places where the training really, really was there and bore fruit. And I really appreciate the people that went out and had barely any training and they stayed faithful, right? They stayed faithful. It was about God. It was about getting a seed planted in a place. And I just think their faith was also just, to me, astounding. We were surrounded by good, solid teams of people, and 15 to Sao Paulo, or 18 to Sao Paulo, 15 to Abidjan, 11 or 12, which seemed really small, to Nairobi. But there were people that went out, and there were 3 of them to go plant churches in hard cities. And so I also just marveled at people's faith and their desire to just, I just want people to know about God. So.
One hero that we all is Mark and Diane Ottenweller. So Mark sold his medical practice there in Atlanta and came over and began to help the poor. And even he was ABC's Man of the Week one time. He's just an amazing individual.
Moved the family.
Moved the whole family. And God blessed us with people like that. Sure, I'll go to Africa. Sure, we'll give it all. Yeah, we'll go. Yeah, we'll learn the language. We'll learn the food. We'll learn to dance. We'll learn to, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
I know that you guys have 3 boys. Where were they born, and what was that like, just raising your children on the mission field?
Matthew was born in Brazil, and Nathan was born in Abidjan, and Joshua was born in Nairobi.
Wow.
in under 4 years, all of those. So I had babies in a lot of different places. I think it was a real blessing on so many fronts. People will say to us, wow, you had your kids outside the U.S. And I'm like, yeah, I did. I think part of it was I was young. Yeah, sure, I'll have my babies here. But it was such a blessing. And I think it gave them, we came back, we came to the States, moved back in 2003. And our oldest son, Matthew, was going into high school. Nathan was going into 8th grade and Joshua was going into 5th grade. But it gave them a different perspective on life. That everybody doesn't have everything. There's a lot of poverty out there. There's a lot of, but they also, I think it was such a blessing for them, don't you think, Mike, that they had lots of different friendships, completely multicultural, right? There was no lines, and I think that was a real blessing to them as well.
I heard a class before we went to Brazil taught by a former missionary, and he said something. He said, when you get to Brazil and you're fluent in Portuguese, you are no closer to understanding these people than before you knew Portuguese. And I thought, no.
With all your grand experience, right?
That can't be true. With all my grand humility.
No. Yeah.
And after learning Portuguese in Brazil, I realized that he was exactly right. That it's one thing to speak the language, but it's another thing to understand the culture. What does this fellow that I'm sitting across the table reading the Bible with, how does he feel about money, success, time, his children, hope for the future? How does he feel about his daughter's 15th birthday or whatever? How does he, these special foods, this culture, this outlook on life was so different, And I think one thing Brazil taught us was that it's not about being bilingual, it's about being bicultural. And when we went to Africa, we knew, what we knew was we didn't know. We didn't know the culture. We didn't understand Africa. And so we dived in to understand the culture. And that's something that, we all, here in America, we live in this big 350 million, big continent of a country. And but these cultures, it's real, and everyone who's lived abroad, they understand that principle.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I think it really helped our kids.
yeah,
You can go back to your question. I think that the recognition of different cultures, not really being raised in a certain bubble. A Christian bubble for sure, right? But I just think it made their life experience richer.
The kids loved it, hey?
Right.
I think, but
Of course, they didn't know any different.
right.
They didn't
Right.
know
I mean,
any different.
they had never lived in the U.S. before we moved.
Yeah.
2000.
Anne-Brigitte almost died giving birth to Nathan. She would have died, except she just had an exceptional doctor in Abidjan that had trained in France for that. Especially, she just had issues when Nathan was born that killed people in the U.S. and it's just, so we were really, that was a close call. And but
here we are.
But here we are.
Wow.
Why'd you come back? Why'd you come back to the States? You've done this amazing work. You've built up all these churches. You've got churches all over the continent of Africa. Why'd you come back?
Well, Scott Green said, the gold standard for mission work is to go and get it going and trained up and to be able to move on with it being successful. We didn't really want to come back but by the year 2002, we actually were talking about maybe it is time to come back and to allow people to stand on their own. Now, we had 2003 was a tumultuous time for our churches, and a lot of churches, just everything was put on pause, including special contributions and whatever. And so we felt like, this is probably a good time to go. And the Africans are absolutely ready. We'll continue to be connected, but this seemed like a good time to go. And it seemed like a good time to go financially, but it seemed like a good time to go spiritually. We probably brought it up 9 months earlier, and we stayed until July of 2003, and decided, okay, this was, and we came on back to the U.S., to San Antonio, Texas. Thank you, Greg Moretsky, for mentioning San Antonio to us.
But why San Antonio?
Yeah, how'd that come about?
San Antonio is not a
Careful.
international metropolis. I mean,
No, it's
I
not.
could see New York City, I could see Miami, LA, Seattle, even San Francisco, but not San Antonio. Why did you go to San Antonio?
Well, it was interesting. Mike was kind of prescient about everything. He said, you know what? The way things are unfolding, nobody's going to move us anywhere. Kind of like in the past.
Right.
Here's an opening.
Right.
We want
You're
you
going to
there.
get assigned.
Right. There were no, he said, there are no more assignments
Right.
coming.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So he called friends in the States and said, hey, we're going to be coming back. We, do you have any openings
Right.
in
Right.
places where you are? So we interviewed in 4 places, and one of those was San Antonio. And we really prayed about each place, and that just seemed the healthiest place, which was all relative in those times. But and they had a lot of teens that were involved. That was important to us.
Yeah.
And we just felt like they also wanted what we had to offer. They wanted a lead evangelist. They wanted us to be able to do there what we had been doing in Africa. And I think that played a huge part in San Antonio.
We did interview in places, but it was also, I was born in Dallas, and there was something about coming to Texas that seemed really good. And we did have a bunch of offers, but we really fell in love with San Antonio and the church there. And we felt like this was a great place with great campuses, a great congregation, and we of course, San Antonio is over 60% Hispanic. Yeah. And so we loved that. We thought that was exciting.
Right.
You know, we just were extremely happy. That's interesting. That's going to be great. Here we go. And there we went.
Right. Mike, you're in your 60s now. How old are you? Was it you're 63? Is that
I'm
right?
63.
Okay. So you guys are getting up there. You're getting in your maturity. You're still in your prime, but
Thank you.
Yes.
you've had a long ministry career. What are you most proud of when you look back on your ministry career? What stands out to you and you go, wow, that just brings back some really warm feelings of satisfaction?
I think, well, that's a really good question. I think what I probably find the most joy in is just I'm so proud in a hopefully in the good use of the word in Scripture.
Of course.
I'm so proud of the brothers in Brazil and Africa that have just been so exemplary, so strong, just people that disciples will get to meet, and it's just Americans will meet. You get to meet them in heaven in there, if not before. But just wonderful people. I think the friendships that we made, the relationships that have lasted a lifetime. That Africa D group that we started back in 1989 still meets every year, and we pull church leaders together, and we hang out, and we laugh, and we talk, and we remember, and we pray, and we plan, and they're fully grown. It's not like we're discipling anybody. They disciple us as much as we disciple them. We've just kind of all grown up together, and it's just great friends, great faith, and a deep love for the continent of Africa and for Brazil as well. San Antonio's become reconnected to São Paulo, Brazil, with the Hendersons going there.
That's right.
And so we're just so excited to be reconnected to Brazil. And with Africa, it's a beautiful thing.
I would have to say a lot of the same things. I think that we're all still friends. We've been through ups and downs and challenges, but we all still really like each other.
That's great.
To me, I just think, wow, that's hard to do, because we all are broken people.
Yeah.
And so I think to me that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm really proud of, that we all still love each other. We still get together.
Well, that one thing that really stands out to me, Mike, is, and Anne-Brigitte, is your relationship with Hervé and Janet Florent. You knew them. Pam's got a connection. She met Hervé in a class in UMass Boston, so there's a connection there. But how have you maintained, how have you managed that relationship for so long? It just seems like a really strong relationship.
Oh, we love the Florents, and they have been pillars in Africa for just all those years, just tremendous. I met Hervé when he came down to São Paulo to do a little summer evangelistic couple of weeks. We called it Splash, São Paulo, Latin America Summer Harvest. He came down for 2 weeks. We met up again in Cairo, but over the years, such dear friends. It's just their devotion to the Lord, to the mission, to us as friends, and the teamwork is outstanding. And they lead a big chunk of the San Antonio Church, and they truly are co-leaders in so many ways. And I think they're just amazing people. So
I think shared values, and we enjoy each other. We enjoy being together. I think we have a shared bond over all those years in Africa. There's just something, I'm sure you guys felt it too, because you've been on the mission field. There's something about those people that you were on the mission field with that you never lose that tie. You've got the memories, you've got the really difficult things that you went through, the scary things, the joys, the highs, lots and lots of highs and lows. And then it just seemed so natural when they came to San Antonio that we fit like gloves. I mean, we have the same vision, the same.
Yeah, they're amazing church builders, amazing disciplers, and amazing friends. And then we have you add in these experiences of, being in coups, of being in riots. At one point in Abidjan, we're living in the government-controlled section, and they're not. It's like we were just the
memories.
We've been tear gassed. We've just we got all these memories of crazy things that have happened in Africa that we've been a part of.
And time and
climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yes, we did that together.
Can you share any stories that just stick with you, that just you look back, you go, wow, that's something I'm never going to forget? I'm sure there's many, but anything that just stands out to you as you think about it?
All those safaris. We ended up going on so many because people visited. We almost knew the names of the lions. No. Great stories, things that stick out.
Are you thinking from the last Africa, anywhere?
Can be anytime.
Yeah.
Can be anytime. That one stumps me because there's so many. I think about receiving a letter in Brazil from a fellow named Elias in northern Mozambique. And then this was in the 80s when I was in Brazil, and the letter came to my house. It didn't even have a number on apartment number or anything. It just a letter, and it came, and I got it, and we started corresponding, and then we lost contact with each other. He was a young minister. I was a young minister. He was in northern Mozambique. And then 30 whatever years later, he finds me online with my email. And I get a letter with a picture of it, of Elias. Elias sent a picture with the letter that I had wrote him in Mozambique. And we had traded letters about training people and baptism and discipleship. And so we actually traveled to northern Mozambique, and we were able to, 30 years later, and with the help of Alcides and Leslie, They studied the Bible. They were baptized. We arrived. Their church is now a part of the International Churches of Christ.
Wow.
And we were able to reunite after all
Wow.
these years. So now there's this church of about 50 people in northern Mozambique.
Wow.
And it's just, and he addressed the letter to Church of Christ, São Paulo, Brazil, and the post office gave it to us.
Wow.
That's okay, but the correspondence, it's snail mail.
It was
Right.
snail mail.
International mail
Right.
Yeah.
in Portuguese.
Right.
Yes.
He's writing to him,
That's right.
and you're writing back to him in Portuguese.
Right.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
And then we
Wow.
lost track of the move and everything. We didn't have his address. We lost track of it. We didn't know how to get a hold of him, and life went on. And
That's
then, And then
amazing.
here comes
I know it
this
is.
30 years later.
And
Wow.
he had taken the things that Mike had sent him, the study series, the articles on discipleship, and all of these things, and had started seed fellowships. Like, how many was it? I mean, and they're going back through now and teaching well, but it was some.
Yeah, it was
many was it?
probably
It was-
8 or 10 or whatever or more, and it's going back now and helping people to, all right. Let's think about maybe replaying this, how to become a Christian tape.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's replay this and let's see what everybody thinks. And people are being baptized, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
I'll never forget putting my hand on the tusk of an elephant standing there. For that, I say thank you to Justin Renton and Duncan Comrie. And I was able to put my hand on I know he was really old.
And medicated.
And maybe medicated.
Highly medicated.
But I was standing there in the bush
Yeah.
with my hand on the tusk of an elephant.
You know, when you ask that question, the things I think that flash through my mind, there's big moments. 5,000 women at a Women's Day
Yeah.
in Johannesburg. But I think when you ask that question, lots of meals. Lots of meals in lots of different places. Fellowship, lots of different kinds of food. Okay, I mean, we've eaten worms, and Mike's eaten crickets and goat's eyeballs, but that kind of, I think that those flash through my mind. Not necessarily. Of course, there's the epic stories, but the being with people in their home, the meals shared, the fellowship, I think is probably a thread that runs through every place we've been.
Wow.
I love that.
People all over the world really love food. So that's
That's true. Yeah.
There was a man who studied the Bible and became a Christian. He had gone blind, and he lived in an informal settlement outside of Nairobi called Kibera. It's grown now to maybe 500,000 people. There's no paved, or at least not much paved of anything. It's a lot of squalor. It's a lot of poverty. But I would say there's some just phenomenal memories. Shem, who has gone on to heaven, just sitting in his house. He had a tin roof. He had a mud floor, and just sitting in his house and eating chapati and learning about Africa as he explained how things worked and why you paid a bride price and all about how Africa. I remember, just funny questions people were asking me. Mike, if George Bush, this is senior, if he loses the election to Bill Clinton, will he actually step down?
we were in Africa.
I said, yeah, he absolutely will. But he said, how do you know? What does the army think? And I just thought, and we would study the Bible with Shem and myself and others in Kibera, and we would study the Bible at night, and I'd look up at that moon, and I thought, I'm so far from home. My mom and dad cannot see this moon. I'm so far away.
Wow.
But it was a beautiful experience.
Wow.
Learned so much. So rich.
One of the things you shared in the class is you both have raised up 25 evangelists and women's ministry leaders. I mean, that's just amazing. It blows my mind. It's so inspiring. It's one of the many things that inspires me about you guys. What's your philosophy? I mean, how do you do that? Like, what's your approach? Can you give us some practicals in terms of there's got to be a template involved in that drives you to raise up so many people.
Wow.
Excuse me. We were just talking about great memories. I think the Spurs winning 5 times must be mentioned.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
It's not really a ministry memory, but
times.
it's okay.
Yeah.
We lived in San Antonio.
Yes.
World champion of the National Basketball Association.
Think about that for a moment.
Yes. Okay.
Template. Training.
Yeah.
25.
Now that's actually evangelists and elders, excuse me. Okay. But it's that I've worked with personally. Is there a template? I believe God has just placed some really great people in our lives that we've had a chance to work with. People that really love the Lord and wanted to learn and wanted to go and grow. And we've been in a place where, we were blessed to be in churches that wanted to plant. So São Paulo was excited to a point, and let's get some evangelists ready to go to Rio and go whatever. Now we left, and that wasn't for us. But Johannesburg sent out lots of teams all over the place. So we were able to get connected with really great people, like Hervé or like Nietzsche or Richard Alawaye or Justin Renton or many, many others. And then I think just really focusing on being friends and just really focusing on just trying to teach everything I possibly could in terms of being an evangelist. And I feel like discipling is just beautiful. It is a God-given plan. It has blessed my life. And I would say, right now, Tom Ziegler, Hervé, Dan Neighbors. There's a lot of people, and some of them now are young, because now the guys that I'm working with in the ministry, some of them are the age of my children.
Wow.
So they're guys who are 30 and 33 years old, and I'm still working, with I'm there, and I still love the friendship, the fun, and the adventure that it is every day.
I think a lot of it too is the vision you have for people, but understanding that there's no quick fix. There's no. It takes time to walk with people. It takes time to teach people how to be effective, not only how to study the Bible, but how to raise up a Bible talk leader to take their place and to keep going. I think character is a huge thing. Because I think the thing that we've seen over the years, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too, you can have really talented people, but if they're not open to God molding their character, that talent goes to waste. It really does. And so I think that it was a combined effort of what does your character need to be to face the storms, to raise up others, to build and plant well. Learning all those things, resiliency, humility, confidence, whatever. I mean, all those things, right? I think that that's really important. And so I think in my mind, I look at young women that I work with, and I think, what would it look like for her to be ready to lead a church? She's not ready right now, and I know that, to lead the women in a church, not lead the church. So what do I need to be helping her with? What are the big rocks that we need to get in first? Because you can pick on the micro things, but if there's a character thing that they really grasp, whether it's something that needs to be grown in or repented of, some of those other things fall into place. And so I kind of try to look forward and then work from there. So in my mind, there's a template. It's not exact, right? But I think, where do I want them to be in 3 months or in 6 months or a year? What would it look like if 3 years from now they're going to have their own ministry, lead their own region? What needs to be in place for that?
I love that.
That's a great insight. Just getting the big rocks dealt with first, and that's very helpful. Just
I think thinking, if I could back up for a moment.
Go ahead.
Thinking about great memories, San Antonio has been an amazing congregation for us. They really took us in, loved us, loved our children. It's been it's a great city. It's a great congregation of very friendly people. It's just extremely loving. And that little congregation took on the job of hosting the world in 2012.
Yes, it did.
I was there.
I was there. I know.
Mountain
We
of the
were there.
Lord.
Yeah.
And there, I mean, we were sitting in the locker room where the Spurs usually are, and there were 18,000 people that
was
came
awesome.
to that summit. I think that was
That's
high
a favorite
watermark.
memory.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
sure.
a high watermark,
Yeah.
and I think that, and then I think too, the planting of College Station from San Antonio and Corpus Christi, those were high watermarks to see. I feel like San Antonio it's been amazing. It's been fun to watch it go from 270 people to over 600.
Wow.
That's been amazing. And and the church is still dreaming of having great impact. So we just love the people. We love the food, and we
Probably
love
a little too much.
yeah, probably a little too much. And I'm just so proud of the church, and I'm so excited about the partnership that we have in Texas.
Yeah.
The closeness between the churches and the partnership that we have. Dallas, Houston, Austin, all the churches. It's a great thing. So we found that we continue to we don't live looking backward. We're looking forward, and we still feel. Let me quote Tom Brown, the first preacher I heard in the ICOC. Our best days are in front of us.
That's right.
The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come.
Wow.
Well, as we talk about going forward, that's a great segue into my next question. Is what our family of churches, maybe about 125,000, something like that, over 100,000. How are we going to get to 1 million?
Yeah.
Like if what would be your plan, Mike, if you're king of the world and you said, okay,
King of the world.
we got to get to 1 million here by 2050. What do you feel like it would take? I'm very interested in knowing what would it take for us to start really growing significantly again and really making a massive, massive difference, impact.
I think to get to 1 million, I believe we're going to get to 1 million and beyond. And I wonder how long it took the early church to get to 1 million. I think we want to be careful that we don't rush it.
Right.
And in the past, we've all seen examples at times where things got a little bit rushed and whatever. But I do believe one thing we need to do right now is I think we as a fellowship need to refocus on the training of ministers and discipling. We used to be called the discipleship movement.
Right.
The discipling movement. Yeah. And that has that faded from our collective whatever DNA or muscle memory, and we need to be. That's a Bible concept that needs to stay in the forefront. We're not training ministers as fast as we have in the past. I think we're training them well. We're much more academically oriented, which I'm a big fan. That's great. We don't need to diminish any academic impact, but we do need to have more ministers able to step up and get training. That we need to restore and build on and look forward to going forward. To reach 1 million, I don't think it'll be billboards and stadiums. It's going to be one-on-one as disciples make disciples that make disciples like the early church grew. And that's always been our pattern. And I think focusing on that, churches focusing on that, thinking about that as we formulate budgets and as we look forward as congregations, I think that's a big need in our churches.
That's great. I agree. I think that the whole discipling, and it is a good plan, right? God gave us the plan. I think I talked with the women this morning about I really still believe that one of our core values is Matthew 28, 18 through 20, that Jesus still wants us to go into the world and teach people about him and make disciples and baptize them and teach them everything. I mean, we don't want to just baptize them and leave them, right? I mean, there's a lot of nurturing that needs to happen and a lot of discipling that needs to happen, healthy discipling, healthy relationships. But I really believe that that's a really good plan God gave
Yes.
us. And I think to really, I think we can get overly enamored with programs. Not that they're bad, but I don't think that that's going to get us to 1 million disciples.
Right.
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 Yeah, it's so true.
Well, it's been great to talk to you guys, and there's so much more on my mind that I could tie you guys up for the next 5 hours, but I'm not going to.
We need more time.
But
Yeah.
I'd like to finish with one final question. What advice would you give to the person, the man or the woman, who wants to make this life count, who wants to live a no regrets life and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches? What would you tell them? Where should they start?
In their Bible, which might seem simplistic.
Yeah.
I really think, number one, realizing that it will be with God. If I want to make an impact, I really need to be surrendered to where you're going to take me. Not my will, but His will. And that's kind of an umbrella perspective, right? But I think that day to day, if I string a lot of days together where I say, God, just use me today, open it up, help me to, I have great plans, but help me do it today. And I think sometimes, again, we can have these grand plans, but it really is a day-to-day walk with God, isn't it? And I think I look back and I never ever thought we would do what we did.
Wow.
But it's just stringing days of surrender to God together and then watch Him do stuff that you just, I couldn't have written that script
Right.
of all the things that we've been able to be a part of, that He's put us there. So I think I have to keep it simple, for myself anyway.
Yeah, well said.
I think for me, I always just, I was beginning all the way back in Colorado and in Abilene. Lord, here am I. I don't know where you want me, but
Right.
I want to be used by you. Just lead me to people that can help me and that I can help and that can help me to grow. Right. Just lead me, and God, could you just, I'm here and I really need you. And I found that God has really blessed us in that way and led us to people and put us in the places where we needed to be. Wow. Even including that day, my son Joshua and I drove into Rogue Valley.
That was awesome.
And went to church and realized the minister is Rob Skinner and there's Pam. And
that was awesome.
And that was
we made a memory.
And we renewed our friendship with the Skinners that day. That's right.
Great.
That was really special.
Did a hot news video.
That's right. That was awesome.
That was
Well, Mike and Anne-Brigitte, thank you so much for your time. And it's just very moving to hear your story and to see the way God's used you.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. It's very inspiring to be called by God so young and to be used your entire life for Him and many more years in the future.
Yeah.
Lord willing.
Yes.
So we're just very grateful for you and grateful for the time. Thank you for joining me on the program.
Thanks for having us.
God bless.
Thank you, guys.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining the Rob Skinner podcast. If you're enjoying this podcast, please hit the subscribe button and let your friends know about it and how to find it. Because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.